पुराने जमाने के
टीचिंग के तरीकों से
हमको क्यों पढ़ाते हैं? It's so boring.
अब वेदांतु देगा प्रॉब्लम से छुटकारा।
Hi kids.
समझ आएगा तो मजा आएगा, मजा आएगा तो समझ आएगा।
Best teachers पढ़ाए तो simple लगे everything.
Leaderboards and quizzes से
Amazing.
learning हो जाए happening। समझ आएगा तो मजा आएगा, मजा आएगा तो
Vedantu, learn live online. To attend a free live class, download the app now.
Hello my dear children, Namaste and welcome back to yet another session of our Class 10 ICSE Biology series. I'm Ambika, Master Teacher of Biology right here at Vedantu. I hope you haven't forgotten me because we've had a few days of break now. I was so used to meeting you all at least 5 days in a week that I've actually really missed meeting you, but unfortunately after doing a couple of sessions early last week, I fell back into my throat strain. My vocal cords were strained again. I had to get some voice rest for a few days. I'm not completely okay, but I am a lot better than I was last week. So it feels great to see you again, and let's get started with our session without wasting any more time. Well, we are well into the third week of November. Remember, we started off early in the month of October. We started off with a lot of positive mindset. We had a lot of general sessions on how to make a timetable, all of those things. Just in case you haven't seen those videos, children, especially ICSE children, do go back to the playlist, search for those videos in which we have discussed a lot of tips and tricks about how to plan your studies, study strategies and all those things, and also about how to create a timetable, how important a timetable is for all of you to come out with flying colors for your board exam. Do go back and visit all of them. Rest of you anyway, do hang on. Let's continue with the chapter reproduction. Remember, we started off with this. We were almost done with this, but there is one very, very important topic that is left, and that is all about pregnancy and parturition. A lot of you told me that you find this chapter very difficult to understand. That is why I decided to go ahead with this chapter before nervous system, but do not worry. I have also been getting a lot of requests about starting the chapter nervous system, and you have also been voting for the topic that you would prefer to have sessions on the most. Unfortunately, it's a huge chapter, so we may not have the time to cover each and every concept from that chapter. Of course, I'm talking about starting with the next session, not today's. Okay, so those of you who have voted, well and good, I will go ahead with your votes and decide on what topics to take up for the chapter nervous system. So stay on, stay tuned. The chapter nervous system will start very soon. Today will be the last session on the chapter reproduction. Okay, so let's, as always, start with a positive frame of mind. Every accomplishment starts with the decision to try. This is true for all of us, not just for children, not just for students, for all of us human beings. This stands very true. The decision to try is what the first step has to be for any accomplishment. You can sit and dream about reaching the sky, about touching the clouds, about floating through the clouds, all of that, whatever it is. But a dream would just stay as good as a dream in the same level if you don't work for it. How do you work for it? The very first step to start working for it is to decide to try. Yes, I will try, and then I can do it, and I will do it, and ultimately you definitely reach success. Keep visualizing your goals. I have been telling you this in all my sessions. I constantly tell you this in many different ways. Keep thinking about your goals. Stay very, very focused on your goals. Have a very, very strong desire to succeed, children. And then I'm telling you, nothing at all in this world can stop you from attaining that. Even until today, until the last minute of listening to me, if you thought you were a very, very bad student, if your teachers, your parents, everyone in your family thought that you were good for nothing at all, just forget it. Okay, that ends there. That story ends there. Right now, this very minute, I want you to decide to give it a try. You can do it. There is nothing that you are incapable of doing. All of us are capable of doing a lot of amazing things in this world, but you wouldn't even know. You don't even have the right to judge yourself without giving it a try, right? So just get started now. You will achieve everything that you desire in life. Okay, so let's go ahead. But do not forget, those of you who have not subscribed to our channel Vedantu 9th and 10th, do remember to hit the subscribe button right now, because we are well into the ICSE series. We have a lot more amazing things in store for you, not just academic, not just subject related or concept related. We also give you a lot of sessions on motivation every Monday. Yes, you know that I keep meeting you with a Monday motivation session. And in addition to that, we keep giving you tips, tricks and strategies on how to crack your exams, how to stay calm, give it your best shot, be the best version of yourself, right? So do not miss out on any of those, because we here at Vedantu believe that your dream is also our dream. We are completely in this journey together. So we here work very, very hard just so that your studies become much easier and a much happier experience for you, especially in the months to come, because they will be stress filled as far as your family and your schools are concerned, right? So remember to hit the subscribe button right now. If you haven't, do share it with all your friends so that they can also benefit from it. And if you are with me right now, do remember to hit the like button right now. Okay, and with that, let's get started. In the last session, we were discussing about the female reproductive system. Let's just have a quick recap of that, not exactly going into explaining the concepts. That may take very, very long. So, and again, today I don't want a recap quiz. Let's just look at the main topic that we learned in the last session. We were talking about the menstrual cycle. Remember, the cyclic series of events that occur in a female's body every month. Each menstrual cycle lasts for approximately 28 days, if you remember, right? Approximately 28 days. We've also seen that the menstrual cycle can be divided into 4 different stages, starting with the menstrual phase, okay, which lasts for roughly 5 days, followed by the follicular phase, and then the ovulation phase or the ovulatory phase, and finally the luteal phase, right? So we have also seen what are the changes, what are the hormonal changes, what happens to the egg, what hormones are produced, everything, all about that. How the endometrium or the uterine lining prepares itself for pregnancy and all of those. And remember, we had discussed in the last session that somewhere in between these two, okay, in the ovulation phase, if you look at it, it lasts for 1 day, roughly 24 hours. Is all that ovulation phase would last for. Somewhere between the ovulation phase and the luteal phase, we saw that there can be 2 scenarios. One, fertilization can occur if sexual intercourse has occurred and sperms have entered into the female reproductive tract. The second scenario, if fertilization does not occur, right? The second scenario is what led to the next menstrual cycle or leads to the next menstrual cycle, because the unfertilized egg along with the prepared endometrium flows out and is shed out through the vagina in the form of menstrual flow or menstrual blood. But what about the first case that I just said? If fertilization occurs, what next? We are talking about when ovulation has occurred. Look at that. Have a close look at that. Let's focus only on that for now. Only the ovulation phase for now. Yes. Around that time, notice where the egg is, right? It's released from the ovary, the mature egg. It's entered the oviduct or the fallopian tube. At this time, if copulation has occurred At this time, if copulation has occurred, the sperms would swim in through the vagina and they are capable of meeting the ovum or the egg in the fallopian tube. That is what this small animation shows. What you see here is the egg or the ovum, and the structures which are swimming towards it are the sperms. Ultimately, one sperm manages to fertilize it, and the nuclei of the sperm and the ovum fuse together to form the zygote. Okay, so in today's session, the stages which follow fertilization are what we will be discussing. Right, children? So, for now, forget about everything else. Just keep in mind the egg is here in the oviduct. The sperm has met the egg as you see here. And what next? After the zygote has been formed, what next? Yes, implantation occurs. The zygote, if you look at it, develops into a structure that comes into the uterus and embeds itself in the wall of the uterus. That process is what you call implantation, right? So, and that stage of development that undergoes implantation, right? Zygote is formed by the fertilization of the ovum by the sperm. After the zygote is formed, it develops further, undergoes a lot of cell divisions and reaches a stage called the blastocyst. Okay? The blastocyst is the structure that you can see in this. The blastocyst is the structure that implants itself, and once implantation has occurred, that is when we say that pregnancy is established. So keep in mind, day 1 of pregnancy, or we don't say that pregnancy is established as soon as fertilization has happened. After the zygote is formed, there are a few more stages of development that need to happen within the first week itself of fertilization, following which a structure called blastocyst will be formed. Once that is implanted in the uterus, that is when pregnancy is said to be established. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's go ahead and look at the various stages of development, embryonic development. Now, if you have a look at this, the ovary, you see that, right? This is the ovary. This is just one portion of the female reproductive system. Okay, we've not shown the other ovary. Imagine that it's in this ovary that ovulation has occurred this month. So obviously the further stages, the further development will be happening on this side of the female reproductive system. Okay, so this is the ovary here that has released its mature ovum. Okay, it's secondary oocytes. Don't worry about all those terms, primary, secondary and all that. Just keep in mind the mature ovum is released from the ovary. Okay, after that happens, if a sperm happened to fertilize it, fertilization occurs. That is what we have shown here. Okay, fertilization has occurred, and of course after that obviously it's the zygote formation. After the zygote is formed, now this is the fallopian tube, you can see starting from this, starting with the fimbriae. After zygote formation, day 1, it starts dividing mitotically. Zygote starts undergoing various rounds of mitotic divisions. 1 cell becomes 2, 2 become 4, 4 become 8, and so on. And you would see that on the 4th day after fertilization has occurred, there is an 8-celled structure, and that structure is called the morula. On day 4, okay, the 8-celled structure is called the morula, and after this it undergoes further division. All of this happens as it moves towards the uterus. Okay, keep that in mind. This is not different structures that you see at the same time. It's the same one that's moving on. I didn't want to put an animated GIF here because then by the time we finish talking about one, the last stage would have come. So this is the easiest way to understand. These are the various stages of the same structure. Okay. Now we have reached the 8-cell stage called the morula. Following this, it undergoes further divisions or cleavage. It's called cleavage, or further divisions that this would undergo. And finally, around day 7, the blastocyst, the structure that I said, the blastocyst, comes in and digs into the endometrial wall that was already ready for it during the menstrual cycle, right? Richly supplied with blood vessels, with all those pregnancy hormones, progesterone and estrogen. It was already prepared to receive it. And finally, the endometrium is happy to receive what it was waiting for, the blastocyst. That is when implantation happens. It digs into it, establishes itself well inside the endometrial layer. Okay? And after this, we call that the embryo. After the blastocyst has implanted, we call it the embryo. But again, the term embryo is used only until roughly the 11th week of pregnancy. After that, we would call it the fetus. I think I've told you this before, but keep that in mind. Early stages up to roughly the 11th week is called the embryo, following which it's called the fetus. Okay, so all good until now? Once again, very quickly, ovary releases its mature ovum, and if sexual intercourse happened and the sperms happened to fertilize the ovum, fertilization occurred to form the zygote. The zygote, on day 1 it splits into 2, on day 2 it splits into 2, day 3 it splits into 4, day 4 it splits into 8 to form a structure called morula. Morula undergoes further divisions to form the structure called blastocyst, which comes in further into the uterus to implant itself in the endometrial layer to establish pregnancy. And after pregnancy has been established, we call it the embryo. Right, children? So let's go ahead and see this. What happens after that? This is the embryo at 8 weeks. Okay, roughly at 8 weeks, which is 2 months. Fetus at 12 weeks. Yes, I told you fetus. After the 11th week, we use the term fetus. Fetus at 12 weeks. Just keep in mind, some of you might be confused whether the spelling of fetus is F-O-E-T-U-S or F-E-T-U-S. Well, both are correct. The only difference is F-E-T-U-S is the US spelling. OE is the British spelling. Okay, so follow whatever works for you. And then 16 weeks, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40. This development occurs for roughly 40 weeks. Imagine, that's like close to 10 months, somewhere around 9 months for sure, plus a week or 10 days is usually what normal pregnancy periods would extend up to. Now, this period during which after fertilization the embryo starts developing. So what I mean is, from fertilization until the baby is ready to be delivered, or from fertilization until childbirth, that particular period, what I said, roughly 9 months plus 10 days or so, okay, is called the gestation period. Gestation. In human beings, this period, the gestation period, lasts for roughly 280 days. Okay, now this number varies between different animals. Of course, it's mammals that we are talking about. So, for example, in the case of dogs, it will be much lesser. It will be roughly around 2 months of gestation. In the case of bigger animals, usually larger animals tend to have a longer gestation period. That's how usually it is said. Okay, so keep in mind, this term is very, very important, children. Gestation is the period between fertilization up to childbirth. We have not included childbirth. Right from zygote formation until the very last day, just before the baby is delivered or expelled out into the world. Okay, that period of 9 months or 280 days is what we call gestation period. Okay, now this is an interesting fact. This is what I said. Larger animals have much longer gestation periods. Imagine, elephants' gestation goes on for up to 640 to 660 days. Wow, that is like a little more than 1.5 years. A lot more than 1.5 years, close to 2 years, right? In fact, I think roughly 22 months it would be. Wow, like 9 months is what human moms bear their children in their uteruses. But imagine these animals. They have to be careful for all that while, roughly 22 weeks. Amazing, right? All such gifts of nature. Now see, I found this very cute. At the end of 22 months, the mom is like, thank God you look like your dad. I was worried for 2 years. So anyway, all gifts of nature, all surprises of nature, everything is very, very interesting to know. Coming back to us humans, this is what a completely fully developed human fetus would look like towards the end of pregnancy. Somewhere in the 9th month or towards the end of the 9th month, this is what a human fetus would look like. You see that this is the uterus. This is the cervix, which is the opening of the uterus that opens into the birth canal or the vagina, right? So what happens after that? Once it's fully developed, what happens? That is yet another stage which we will be talking about. But in the meantime, something else that's very, very fascinating, right? We have spoken about gestation, but for all these 9 months, how is the baby able to get all its nutrients? How is it able to get its oxygen? Is it that its nose can take in oxygen from the mother's oxygen? Can it inhale? Can it eat with its hands, or can it just open its mouth to eat what mom has eaten? Well, I think when I was a child, that's what I used to think, that when babies are inside their mom's tummy, I was thinking that they eat whatever the mom eats. So, but then, of course, biology taught me that's not the case. And these days, I know that all of you are much smarter than that. You would have some idea. Yes, there are a lot of special structures, the main thing of which is the placenta. The placenta is basically, now you see in this image, this is what the placenta is. Yes, this structure. This structure here is what I call the placenta. What exactly is it? It's basically a structure that acts as a connection between the mother and the fetus. Connection in the sense that it's the structure, it's a group of tissues, okay, through which the baby or the fetus can receive oxygen and nutrients from its mother, and whatever it has to excrete, like carbon dioxide and all of its other nitrogenous waste, right, urea and everything else, is excreted out or given out through the placenta into the mother's blood, right? So that is how important the placenta is in all of these 9 months. The magical structure that acts to nourish the embryo. To nourish the fetus. The embryo first, and then of course the fetus. Now, one common misconception that I find among children is that many of us in general tend to think that placenta is the same as umbilical cord. But that's not the case. Umbilical cord, if you look at this structure that you see here with red and blue stripes here just mean the blood supply, the red and blue, the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. But the umbilical cord is basically a cord-like or tubular structure that connects the placenta, which is in the mother's uterus, to the baby's body. The cord that connects the baby to the placenta is the umbilical cord. Okay? So the placenta itself is not the umbilical cord. That's what I'm trying to say. They are not synonymous. Umbilical cord is, simply put, the connection between the baby or the fetus and the placenta, right? Now, if you just zoom into this particular part of the placenta, this is what it would look like, right? So you would see that inner parts of it are arranged into finger-like projections, like you would see in the small intestine, finger-like projections called villi, okay? That's what this is. And why is such a structure present? It's basically to increase the surface area for richer supply of blood capillaries. Okay, that is why these finger-like structures are present here. Now what you see here, intervillar space, is basically the space between adjacent villi. Okay, now the rest of it, what do you see on that side and this side of the placenta? Basically, this is what you see here. I hope you've understood that. On this side, by which I mean it's the mom's side of the placenta. Okay, mom's side of the placenta, you would see her blood vessels. The mother's blood vessels are what you see in blue and red on this side. On this side, you would see the fetus's blood vessels, mother's blood vessels there, and the fetus's blood vessels on this side. Where does it open? It goes into the umbilical cord, right? This layer or this villus is part of the placental membrane. Right, children? So this is, I put this here only for you to have better understanding. Not that you would be asked questions based on such a diagram, but to be able to imagine it right, I feel that you should have this, so that you never forget about this for the rest of your life. Keep in mind, what have we discussed in the last 2 minutes? We are talking about the placenta, okay, which acts as the structure that supports the embryo in terms of nourishment and oxygenation and excretion, right? So if you zoom into that, you would see that it's arranged in this manner. One side of the placenta is in touch with the mother's tissues. The other side of the placenta goes into the umbilical cord that connects to the fetus's body, right? So mother's blood vessels, fetus's blood vessels, and the placental tissue arranged in the form of villi. Right? So just keep that much in mind. Let's now look at what all the placenta does. Now, I think this illustration does a good job of summarizing whatever the placenta does. If you look at it, this is the mother's side of the placenta. This is the fetus's side of the placenta. This is what the placenta is. Just magnify that and we have this here. Okay? So that is basically the idea. From the mother's blood to the baby's blood, these substances can move in. What all? Obviously, oxygen, because the baby needs oxygen to develop better and better every single second. Water and electrolytes, yes, very important. Nutrients, of course. Hormones, again, very important for development. Antibodies, yes. This is the time when a lot of antibodies from the mother's body enter the fetus's body. And hence, if that happens well enough at this stage, that child or that baby will have a lot of those antibodies and have a very well developed immune system, right? And then drugs, any medicines that are taken in. Viruses, of course, they can also pass in through this connection, the placental connection. What happens the other way around? From the baby's blood to the mother's blood, what all can move? Carbon dioxide, of course, the baby doesn't need it. So the baby is like, yeah, mom, take all of that. And along with the mom's excretory processes, it would be given out of her body as well. Carbon dioxide, water and urea, unused water, unwanted water, excess water, urea or nitrogenous wastes, other waste products, if any, and hormones from the baby to the mother's body, right? So this is basically an idea of the exchange that happens across the placental barrier. Now, in case you have to write this for your exam, that is why I have put this, because placenta as such is a very, very important concept, children. What is placenta? What is its significance or what are its functions? That can be asked for your exam. So if that is asked, this is what you have to write, the functions of the placenta. It produces hormones such as estrogen, progesterone and relaxin. What do? Basically, relaxin helps in keeping the uterine muscles relaxed until the end of pregnancy. Only when contraction has to happen, it will perhaps reduce in concentration, relaxin, right? And estrogen and progesterone, as you know, help in maintaining pregnancy and of course the female secondary sexual characters for estrogen. But progesterone and a little bit of estrogen does help in maintaining the endometrial lining of the uterus, and more importantly, they also act in such a way that newer follicles in the ovaries are not formed, so that until this pregnancy is over, a new egg is not released or a new egg is not produced. This is why in those 9 months, menstruation cannot happen, right? Now, the next point, provides oxygen and nutrients to the fetus, of course. And thirdly, removes carbon dioxide and waste like urea from the fetus and sends it to the mother's blood, right? So have this very, very clear in your mind. This is an extremely important concept. Yes. Now coming to fetal membranes. We know that the fetus is growing inside the mother's uterus, and protection has to be very high, right? Because the mother will be active all this while. God willing, everything goes well, she will be active and she has to continue with all her daily chores. So how is the baby protected? How is the fetus protected? That is because there are 4 major layers or 4 major membranes that protect the fetus during pregnancy. They are the amnion, yes, the amnion, the chorion, right? The allantois and the yolk sac. The amnion, chorion, allantois and yolk sac. What all do they do? Now, each of these membranes, each of these layers has its own function. Let's just look at what they would be. This is roughly what they would do. Now, as you can see, the amnion is the innermost layer and it's filled with amniotic fluid. This part of it. This is the amniotic cavity, which is the cavity between the fetus and the amnion, right? This blue colored portion that you see, amniotic cavity, and that is filled with amniotic fluid. All the time, the baby is present inside that fluid. Okay, so that is again for a reason. We will look at that in a bit. Hold on. The next layers, chorion and allantois, together they help or they provide nourishment to the growing fetus, and they also help in removing waste. Chorion and allantois together, and hence we also call them the chorioallantoic membrane. Okay, and of course the yolk sac. The yolk sac is the region where blood cells would be formed. Okay, the region where blood cells would be formed. Formation of blood cells occurs here in the yolk sac. Right, children? Amnion, chorion, allantois and yolk sac. Now coming to what I was telling you, the amniotic fluid. This blue colored portion here is where the amniotic fluid would be. That protects the embryo from mechanical jerks, mechanical shocks, any external jerk. Of course, it maintains a uniform pressure around the embryo so that it's well protected. And thirdly, of course, it prevents sticking of the embryo to the amniotic layer. In order to prevent that, amniotic fluid is present. Okay, now keep that in mind, children. This is actually why when a baby is born, you must have seen in movies, even those of you who must have seen the movie 3 Idiots would have seen this. The baby looks very, very slippery and slimy as soon as it's born. It's because of all of this. It's suspended throughout pregnancy in a fluidy environment. That is why you see it like that as soon as it's born, and then it's cleaned, and usually family members get to see it after the first cleaning process. Okay, anyway, so keep this in mind. It's an extremely important thing to remember, the 4 fetal membranes and what the amniotic fluid does. Okay, yes, the next stage of course would be childbirth. After gestation is completed, the fully developed fetus has to come out of the mother's body. That process is what we call childbirth in common language. In biology, there is a term for that. We call it parturition. Yes, a very, very important term to remember. Gestation was between fertilization to childbirth. Childbirth itself is called parturition, and it's stimulated by the hormone, the endocrine hormone oxytocin. How does it work? This is not important for you to remember, but it's always useful to understand this so that you don't forget it. Okay, it starts right here. When the fetus is fully developed, it pushes against the cervix. The cervix is this opening of the uterus, right? This is what the cervical aperture is. It pushes against that, causing it to stretch. So the cervix basically starts splitting open little by little because the baby's head is pushing against it. Next, stretching of the cervix would cause nerve impulses to be sent to the brain. Okay, it's basically trying to communicate with the brain and trying to tell it that the baby is ready to come out. The brain stimulates the posterior pituitary to release its hormone called oxytocin. And what does oxytocin do? Yes, of course, very important. It causes the uterine lining, the muscles lining the uterus to contract, right, continuously, so that contraction is this. It keeps pushing the uterus so that the baby can be pushed out of the mother's body. That is what oxytocin basically does. Yes, and parturition occurs in 3 basic stages, as you see here. Stage 1 is where dilation of the cervix occurs, what you see here. Right, initial phase of dilation, and here the active phase where the cervix is dilated. Forget about all these complex terms around. Just look at the image for you to understand. The cervix is normal first. It's just beginning to get pushed by the baby's head. The next stage where the cervix is dilated well. Stage 2, where the fetus begins to get expelled. The cervix has dilated and through the vagina, the head is beginning to come out. That is what stage 2 is, expulsion of the fetus. Even after the fetus has come out, it doesn't end there. There is one more last stage, which is the delivery of the placenta. What you see here, the remaining placental tissues would be expelled out after the fetus has exited the mother's body. Just look at that. That is the kind of care nature gives to growing fetuses until the baby has come out safely into the outside world. It doesn't let go of the placenta. Baby goes out first, placenta goes out only after that because it's no longer required in the mother's body, right? So these are the 3 basic stages of parturition. Keep in mind the hormone oxytocin, right? And now it's time for a quiz, a very, very quick quiz. The first question, the stage of embryo development at which implantation occurs is called, yes, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and go. The answer is blastocyst. The second question, the period from fertilization until birth of the baby is called, yes, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and go. Yes, the answer is gestation. Keep that in mind. All those terms are very important, children. Gestation, implantation, parturition, everything is important. Okay. One more last question for the day. The structure that provides oxygen and nutrients to the growing fetus. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. The answer is definitely the placenta, and I'm sure most of you would have got it right. Okay, and before we sign off for the day, one quick homework question. What is the difference between identical twins and fraternal twins? Well, I'm asking in terms of whatever you know. If it is about the external appearance of identical and fraternal twins that you want to talk about, I would like to see that also as an answer. There is no right and wrong here. Whatever you know about identical and fraternal twins, in case by some previous research or by the research that you will carry out now to answer this, in case based on that you want to explain about how they are developed, that is also welcome. Whatever your answers are, do remember to post them in the comment section below, or if it's handwritten or typed out, you can even send it to me on my email ID, which I will show at the very end. Okay, and now you must have heard about the micro courses that we have. Do remember, in case you want to learn specific topics, specific chapters, we have an option called micro courses. Do go to the website and check out the micro course the section that's put up there, and you can use this code AMMIC to get 95% off on the micro courses, right? For more details, do check out the section on the Vedantu website. Yes, and do remember to download Vedantu's learning app. We do have a lot of amazing features out there. Stay in touch with us through the Telegram group. Get all your academic doubts solved by our amazing and dedicated and friendly master teachers and academic experts. And most importantly, if you have enjoyed today's session, do remember to hit the like button right now. Do share it with all your friends so that this topic is much easier for them, also for their exams. And do remember to subscribe to the channel Vedantu 9th and 10th in case you have not done it yet. Yes, we will be meeting again with a lot more amazing topics taught in a much simpler and interesting manner so that your exams will be much easier. In the meantime, anything that I can help you with, do remember to drop an email at ambika.gopalakrishnan@vedantu.com. I will certainly be replying to that, even if not immediately. Within a few days, definitely you can expect a reply from me. Those of you who have already been sending me emails, you would know this for sure, that I reply to every mail that I get, right? So until we meet again, this is Ambika signing off, and until then, happy studying and bye-bye.